Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I join the Prime Minister in sending condolences to the family and friends of Guardsman Matthew Talbot, who died whilst on anti-poaching activities. It is a reminder of the diverse work that the armed forces do, and I think we thank them for it and the help they're giving to the people of Malawi. I join her also in welcoming the birth of the baby to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, and that she, along with all of us, are recognising and enjoying Ramadan and Vaisakhi at this time. It's important to show the diversity of this country and celebrate all religious festivals. Mr. Speaker, I hope the whole House will also join me in congratulating a great football team. Manchester City on winning the Women's FA Cup. And in view of the amazing performance of Liverpool last night, perhaps the Prime Minister could take some tips from Jürgen Klopp on how to get a good result in Europe. Mr. Speaker, our National Health Service is our country's greatest social achievement. Its staff show amazing dedication, but this government's failures are taking their toll. An NHS staff survey found that 40% of staff have reported suffering work-related stress in the last year alone. Mr. Speaker, can the government explain why they're being so severely let down by this government?
Can I first of all say to the right honourable gentleman, I actually think that when we look at the Liverpool win over Barcelona last night, what it shows is that when everyone says it's all over, that your European opposition have got you beat, the clock's ticking down, it's time to concede defeat. Actually, we can still secure success if everyone comes together. The right honourable gentleman asks about staffing in the NHS. What we see in relation to the NHS workforce is that for too long, governments have failed to produce the proper workforce planning to give our staff in the NHS the care that they deserve. It is this government, with its long-term plan, that is ensuring that we are giving that care to staff. The NHS staff work hard caring for patients. This government will care for NHS staff. It's only because we're able to give the NHS its biggest cash boost in its history, only able to give it that long-term plan, that we will deliver for NHS staff.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Speaker, under the last Labour government, NHS investment rose by 6% a year. Under this government, it's barely reached 1.5%. And 5,000 nurses and midwives from European Union countries have left the NHS in the past 2 years, and there are 100,000 staff vacancies across the NHS in England alone. The Royal College of Radiologists recently said that the shortage of cancer doctors puts care at risk. What is the Prime Minister doing to remedy this dangerous situation?
To the right honourable gentleman, what have we seen this year? What we have seen this year is... What we've seen this year is the numbers of doctors and nurses in the NHS at their highest level in its 70-year history. As I say, our NHS staff work hard 24/7, and their dedication is second to none. I'm proud of our NHS. He talks down our NHS. Let's just remember this. At the last general election, the Labour Party promised to give the NHS less money than the Conservative government is giving them. The Labour Party in government would crash the economy, which would mean less money available for the NHS. And who are the only party in government that has cut funding to the NHS? The Labour Party.
Mr. Speaker, nobody on this side of the House ever talks down the NHS. It's Labour's greatest achievement. The principle of health care, free at the point of need, as a human right, was a Labour achievement.
And they voted against it.
And every Tory MP voted against it. Today, Mr. Speaker, is World Ovarian Cancer Day, for which early diagnosis, like all cancers, is essential. In February, almost a quarter of patients waited more than 2 months to start cancer treatment following a GP referral. The worst performance on record. Will the Prime Minister apologise to those thousands of cancer patients enduring weeks of unbelievable stress and worry whilst they're waiting to start the treatment they should be able to start quickly after they've been referred in order to have a better chance of survival?
Well, we recognise the importance of early diagnosis and early treatment, and in ovarian cancer and in other cancers and in other conditions as well. That's why a key part of the 10-year plan, the long-term plan for the NHS, which is being put forward under this government, is about that early diagnosis. We recognise the importance of that. But the Right Honourable Gentleman might just like to reflect on the fact that there is a part of the United Kingdom where the urgent cancer treatment target hasn't been met since June 2008. Where is that? In Wales, under Labour.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Under the NHS in Wales, Mr. Speaker, more people are surviving cancer than ever before, and I think we should welcome the work that they've done. Mr. Speaker, the Royal College of Radiologists said our workforce projections are increasingly weak. Almost half of all women with ovarian cancer reported having to visit the GP 3 times before they actually got referred for a test. And today we learn that GP numbers are experiencing their first sustainable fall for 50 years. GPs, Mr. Speaker, are often the ones who play the vital role in early identification of cancers and other serious problems. Does the Prime Minister think it's acceptable that 1/3 of people needing an urgent GP appointment on the day that they ask for one are being turned away because of the shortage of GPs?
Right honourable gentleman, we recognise that GPs are a vital part of the NHS, and there are actually more GPs in the NHS today than in 2015. But we've also made it easier for people to access their GPs by ensuring that GP surgeries are open for more days of the week, so people can have that better access. We're incentivising GP trainees to work in hard-to-recruit areas and making it easier and quicker for qualified doctors to return to the NHS. And under our NHS long-term plan, we will see, for the first time in its 70-year history, the proportion of funding for primary medical and community care as a percentage of the NHS budget increasing for the first time in its 70-year history. That's because it's this government that recognises the importance of primary care in our National Health Service, and it's this government that's careful management of the economy means there's money available to put into our National Health Service.
Jeremy Corbyn.
To any A&E department in the country, you'll find they're under enormous pressure precisely because there is a shortage of GPs to see people in the first place. And the Conservative Secretary of State, whilst promoting private GP services, at the same time is overseeing the biggest drop in NHS GPs for 50 years. 1 in 10 GPs are now seeing twice as many patients as it is safe for them to do so. That is the pressure they're under. The NHS has failed to meet its A&E waiting time target for nearly 4 years. In March this year, more than 1 in 5 patients waited more than 4 hours to be seen. Will the Prime Minister, on behalf of the government, apologise to tens of thousands of people waiting for too long in deep distress just to get seen at an A&E department because of the pressure they are under?
I say to the Right Honourable Gentleman, we recognise the importance of these targets in the NHS. That's why one of the elements of the 10-year long-term plan in the NHS, funded by the biggest cash boost in the NHS's history, given by this Conservative government because of its good management of the economy, is to ensure that we're improving those targets. But perhaps he would also like to stand up and apologise for the fact that the A&E waiting time target hasn't been met, not for 4 years, but for over a decade under a Labour government in Wales.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Mr. Speaker, the reality is, under a Tory government, spending on the NHS and investment in it is less than it was under Labour, and even with her funding announcements, remains the same case. Mr. Speaker, the complacent attitude and platitudes hide the reality that under the Tories, our health service is going through the longest funding squeeze in history. 20,000 jobs in mental health units are unfilled. Public satisfaction at GP services is the worst on record. Cancer treatment delays are the worst on record. And A&E waiting times, the worst on record. And tragically, infant mortality is rising. Will the Prime Minister admit the government has failed the health service, failed NHS staff, and therefore failed the patients who rely on the NHS?
There are more people alive today because our cancer treatment has improved than would have been in 2010. And at the last general election, somebody said the following. They said that an extra £7 billion for the NHS would give our NHS the resources it needs to deliver the best possible care for patients. I wonder who that was. It was none other than the Leader of the Opposition. Is this government giving the NHS £7 billion? No. Is it giving it twice that, £14 billion? No. It is giving the NHS £20 billion. I'm proud of this government's and the Conservative Party's record on the NHS. It's the Conservative Party that is giving the NHS its biggest cash boost in its history. It's a Conservative Party that's giving it a sustainable 10-year long-term plan to ensure it is there for people in the future. It's the Conservative Party that has seen more nurses, more doctors in our National Health Service dedicated to caring for patients. And that's only possible because it's the Conservative government that manages our economy, manages our public finances, and a Labour Party in government would crash our economy, meaning less money for the NHS, less money for its staff, and less care for its patients.